This is my last video for my series on the 6 wives of Henry VIII. And in this video I'm talking about Catherine Parr, the last wife, the survivor. But what I want to do in this video is to celebrate her life and her achievements. I want us to know who was Catherine Parr, more than just a survivor, a force to be reckoned with, a writer, and a powerful and very intelligent woman. Born in 1512, she was the daughter of Sir Thomas Parr and Maud Green. And Maud Green had worked in the service of Catherine of Aragon, and it is believed that it is why she is called Catherine herself. So here we have a link, it's quite astonishing, between the first wife of Henry VIII and the last wife of Henry VIII. It's quite amazing that they share the same name, but there's a reason. Catherine of Aragon was the godmother of Catherine Parr. Henry VIII definitely had a taste for women that were quite similar in terms of wit, in terms of intelligence, in terms of sass even. Before being married to Henry VIII, Catherine Parr had been married twice before. In 1529, she was married to Sir Edward Burrough, but he died 4 years later, so she became a widow quite young. She remarried in 1534 to John Neville, the 3rd Baron Latimer, and it was quite the marriage that would level up her status, if you see what I mean. She became nobility, and they had an estate, and they had lots of power and influence. John Neville was a very strong Catholic man, and so when there was a break with Rome, he was opposing the religious reforms that were happening during Henry VIII's reign. Catherine found herself soon in the crossfire of the Catholic rebellion that happened in the north. Her husband joined the forces against Henry VIII. The Lincolnshire Rising demanded that he join their efforts in reinstating the old religion. During that time, Catherine was left away with her 2 stepchildren. John Neville had 2 children before her, and she was already a very good stepmother to them. She got very, very close to them, and it's something that is quite kind of like a theme in her life. She's a very nurturing and loving and caring person, and she was a very great stepmother to these children, and then we know that she's going to become very close to Henry's children, and then she's finally going to have her daughter, but the end is quite tragic. In 1537, during the rebellion, Catherine and the children of John Neville were held hostage in Snape Castle. So it was kind of like a very difficult time for her, where this family home became her prison. Rebels really wanted to keep the Latimer's family hostage to make sure that he would comply with all their demands. Due to her husband, John Neville became really ill, and she would nurse him until his death in 1543. So here we really have a woman who had experience in marriages. She was not a virgin. She was quite the opposite of all the women that Henry VIII had been with in many ways. You know, I said he had a type, he had the same taste, but at the same time, she was different because he was no longer looking at the end of his life for someone who was a virgin, who was pure, who was innocent. He knew that she had been married twice before, but he also knew, and I think he was attracted to, her loyalty and her the fact that she was so caring and loving. Catherine Parr married Henry VIII on the 12th July 1543 at Hampton Court Palace. What's quite a bit sad for her is that Henry VIII was not, again, like for all the other women, a choice. She didn't really want to marry him. She was in love with someone else, Thomas Seymour, the brother of James Seymour. And again, we see how all these women, all these wives, also linked or intertwined with one another. When she became queen, Catherine Parr made sure that Henry VIII's children were reinstated at court, and she really nurtured relationship with Mary, Edward, and also Elizabeth. And I really believe that she influenced the 3 of them greatly. Obviously, she shared different religious views with Mary, with Princess Mary, but yet they were still very close, and I think there was still a lot of respect between them. And I think it's quite nice to see that their relationship, was not dictated by their religious views, and that they could overcome this to still be close to one another. Like Catherine of Aragon before, in 1544, when Henry VIII went to war against France obviously, she was made regent, and she was extremely good at being regent and at being in control. And actually, she was so much in control, like writing letters. She had a privy council, to support her, like Catherine of Aragon had when she was made regent herself. And so in many ways, they were like the same type of rulers. And what we see here is that very strong women being able to rule. But what's more important here is that it was in 1544, which means that she was an example for Mary and Elizabeth, who had a true example of a woman ruling, on behalf of a man. But here there was something very empowering for them. Catherine Parr's greatest achievement for me is definitely her writing. The fact that she's the first female author to publish work in her own name. She's absolutely amazing. She wrote Prayers and Meditations in 1545, but she wrote other works, and she was not afraid of having her voice. But here, that's where I want to discuss as well, that she was playing a dangerous game, because she felt more and more empowered by her title, the trust that Henry VIII had in her. But at the same time, we know that she was that close herself to be sent to the Tower of London. Because of her religious views, there were a lot of people who were also extremely still very anti-Protestant. And Stephen Gardiner and other people, privy councillors, were starting to see her as a threat, and they tried to turn Henry against her. But Catherine Parr had something that the other wives didn't have. She had the experience of the other wives. She knew the political games even better. She had witnessed what happened to Catherine of Aragon, to Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, to some extent, to Anne of Cleves, to some extent, to Catherine Howard. And she was not going to be played the same way. She begged Henry, but she didn't beg in a way that was seen as a place of weakness. She really tried to reconnect with him. She made him trust her again, to the same level that they were before. So in many ways, she played her enemies because she knew what was coming. She could tell what was the rumors, the scandals that was coming, and what they were saying against her. And they only did that because she was a powerful woman, writing in her own name and not being scared, to have her own voice in a male-dominated world. She was absolutely brilliant. Catherine Parr is known as the survivor, right? Because she survived Henry VIII. She avoided court scandal. She avoided, to lose her head, which is quite remarkable when you think about the 6 wives of Henry VIII. But her life doesn't finish with Henry VIII. Henry VIII died in 1547, and then she had the law that we discussed before with Thomas Seymour. She was finally free, or she thought she was free, to pursue that love. So it was going to be the first time that she married for love. She always had married because her parents had told her to marry before, or out of convenience, or because the king wanted her, right? So she fell forced into that. But now with Thomas Seymour, it was apparently a love story. And yet, tragically, it's almost like she lost, she went from a toxic man to another toxic man, but the toxicity was kind of different. I believe, and I know that some historians and authors are trying to change our views, and I'm waiting for their work, and I cannot wait to read them. But at the same time, I have to look at the evidence we have. Thomas Seymour was kind of a sexual predator to younger people, especially Elizabeth I. So Catherine and Thomas Seymour lived together, went to Sudley Castle, and they took with them Princess Elizabeth. Elizabeth was so trustful with Catherine Parr, and that's where I think that Catherine Parr failed, in the last years of her life, to protect her stepdaughter Elizabeth. And Thomas Seymour was a very ambitious, but also manipulative man. There's this power struggle with his brother, and he was trying probably to get more power and also he was just really interested in Elizabeth. And here we have this court scandal that happened, and we have Catherine, who failed really a younger woman. And it's quite sad because they were very close, and Catherine Parr had so much to offer, so much of an influence, so much of a mother figure to Elizabeth. But here, there's a total failure on her behalf to see what was happening and to do something. And I think it's because of her love and infatuation with Thomas Seymour. She refused to see the man that he truly was. And so the report we have when he is, like, you know, seeing in Elizabeth's chamber very early, that her dress, gowns is ripped into pieces, and that he's tickling her. We can't know exactly what happened, the extent of it. I believe it's quite bad, but we don't have any proof, so. But it's still bloody inappropriate. He's married to someone, and he's doing this to her stepdaughter, so very, very inappropriate, and also the sister of the king. So, like, I think it's quite very bad. Catherine passed life at the end. I think it's so sad because she was so in love, you know, so happy to be finally with the man she loved, and yet her tragic end. She finally became pregnant herself, having, you know, for once her own baby, and such a great stepmother, and I believe she would have been an amazing mother. Unfortunately, her daughter Mary, probably after Princess Mary, died quite early, quite young, but also Catherine Parr died of childbirth complications, which shows us again how vulnerable we are as women when it comes, like, to be put through childbirth. You know, everyone is talking about how natural it is and how easy it can be, and every woman can do it. Yeah, let's not forget how many women died of childbirth, and how much we, you know, how far we come from everything that happened in the past. But in the past, it was a really a life and death matter. So yeah, that is my video on Catherine Parr, a brilliant mind, but a very tragic end. Not brought by Henry this time, though, so I guess it is a win. For me, if we have to remember Catherine Parr, she's a woman who could make lemonade out of lemons on multiple occasions. She's someone who always, like, finding a new way to survive, but not just to survive, actually, to thrive. And I think that's how we should remember her. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you'll enjoy all my videos on the sixth wife, and you can check my other videos on Once Upon a Woman, on about lesser known female figures. Leave me a comment and let me know what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe. It means so much to me. Thank you so very much for watching. Bye.